Welcome to the Money Insights Podcast, where high-income earners come to learn wealth-building strategies that will take them from high income to high net worth. With your hosts, financial and wealth-building experts, Christian Allen and Rod Zabriskie.
Welcome into today's episode of the Money Insights Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Allen, with my co-host, Rod the Pod Zabriskie. Rod, what's going on, man?
Hey, I am doing great. And it's been hot around here.
Been crazy hot. Although I had a lady tell me yesterday that it's cooling down, even though today it's 98. So I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I do. I watched the overnight lows, and I'm grateful that we're getting like into the low 60s overnight.
Okay.
Because if it's and I say that realizing, so Jody and I visited Alabama here a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And people in the South are like, I don't even know what that means, because the high was only maybe like high 80s while we were there. And so we were like, oh man, we're grateful. But the low was like high 70s.
Okay, that's wild. In New York, it was like 90s, but it was like there was like a 15 to 18 degree gap. Okay. But in our world, there's more like a 25 to 30 degree gap.
Yep.
Right. Although I don't want it to get too cold, Rod, because I have a lot of power walking to do in the middle of the night, and it can't get too cold. Otherwise, I have to start bundling up. And anyway, but I'm okay. I'm okay until we get to like the 50s.
Yeah.
Then I start to get a little chilly. Okay, Rod, I have a question for you.
Okay.
To kick this episode off, it's not one you actually have to answer right this second. We'll answer it. But here's the question. Why do so many, even millions and millions of people, follow bad financial advice?
It is a fantastic
That's the question. Okay, so the episode title for today is The Ramsey Effect, Why Millions of People Follow Bad Financial Advice. We're going to talk about the Ramsey Effect, but it's more broad than the Ramsey Effect. He's just like he's like the spokesperson for all bad financial advice that's out there. All cookie cutter financial advice that's out there. It's, I say bad. It's not always bad. It's just terribly incomplete and out of context a lot of times. Right. So anyway, lots of other people fit into that. And we're just going to use Ramsey as the name for anybody that fits into like the talking head, groupthink, kind of simplistic financial advice. That's kind of what we would call it. So before we do that, Rod, before we get into the why, and let me just say this, like, I feel like I should give some context as to how this came about. So somebody close in my life who is a huge Dave Ramsey supporter, or maybe not even a huge Dave Ramsey supporter, but enough so that he was willing to call me out on some of my takes in the past, right? Like say, hey, well, actually, Dave thinks this instead. And then I remember I sent him like an excerpt in his book. I was like, well, I'm just taking Dave's words. Like, I don't know what else to do. Right. Anyway, but I had this idea in my head. I was like, why someone who's smart, educated, like every reason to think that they would dig into and understand financial concepts at their core, just wouldn't take the time, energy, effort to do it, or to even challenge their thinking around like the ways that they'd been doing. I did what I always do, and probably what 90% of everybody else does these days. I went to Jarvis, aka ChatGPT, and I was like, why is this happening? We had a long conversation about why bad financial advice exists out there in the world. And I'm excited because I feel like there's a lot of nuggets of truth we can find. So we're not going to focus as much on the actual finance today. We are going to hit on that a little bit. I want to make sure we don't take for granted the difference in the invest with benefits philosophy versus what Dave's teaching. We'll hit on that. But really, it's about the psychology and sociology behind why so many people are following bad financial advice. And for whatever reason, that just got me jazzed up. I thought it was a fun topic. I view it very similar to the way that we view the political realm, right? And we'll get into that here in just a few minutes. Okay, but before we do that, Rod, could you help us out by just giving us kind of a snapshot of the difference between the way that Money Insights views wealth building and the way that Dave Ramsey views wealth building?
Yeah. So, and specifically, we're going to focus on this whole invest with benefits framework that we've created, because that's how we can communicate to others the way we approach wealth building, right?
Yeah.
So first we're going to hit the low-hanging fruit and debt, right?
Debt.
And the reason is because, especially as it relates specifically to Dave Ramsey, that's got to be like the overarching umbrella over just about everything he does and talks about, right?
Yes.
And
It's freedom from debt and like the pain and suffering that you get from having debt, right? Like, and so it's bad, not just money bad, it's like morally bad.
Yeah, and the danger of what it can bring, right?
Yeah.
So he says no debt.
No
Eliminate
debt. Eliminate all
debt.
debt. If you're listening to this, is actually one of the things I got in trouble for on this, because this person in my life suggested that Dave Ramsey actually doesn't say get rid of all debt. And so again, I had to just go into the books and into the quotes, and I was like, well, if he doesn't, he sure says it. So I don't know what's going on. But anyway, my experience is that Dave prefers all debt elimination, if at all possible. He might succeed that you buy a home with with a loan, but like that's only if you really need to,
or if you already did. He takes people who are already in that situation, right?
Good point. So if you're already behind the 8 ball, we're going to try to bring you out.
Yep. And our, like, in comparison to that, we see debt as a way to create leverage. And as long as you're being smart about it and having liquidity and other pieces in place that give you a safety net, so to speak, then do it. Like, use it to benefit your life, right?
Yeah. So leverage is a tool, right? It's not something we have to use. But it's a tool that will certainly, without question, accelerate the way that we build wealth. Again, to the extent that we do it thoughtfully, and we don't get overextended. And so again, that plays into Dave. So actually, we're getting too far into this, Rod. We're gonna go through these faster so we can get into the psychology. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll hit them more like categorically. So cash flow. Dave's is all about live within your means, and we're saying let's create cash flow to create that freedom, right? Not as an anti-limiting factor, but as a bring yourself some freedom in your world factor.
Well, if you think about it, you have to live below your means, and again, we're not suggesting it's not a good idea to live below your means. Sure. But from a growth, like building your wealth standpoint, you have to go below your means if you're going to have extra cash to stick into your like retirement accounts and things like that in that world. So it's like the one builds on top of the other. And if you don't live well below your means, and that's not your philosophy, then you suddenly don't have any money to do step 2, right? Whereas again, we're suggesting, yes, live within your means the same way, but the building blocks are based on a growth mindset. It's based on using leverage and velocity to create more cash flow so that we can either continue to save more money or we can live a better lifestyle. One or both of those things.
Yep. Well said. Taxes is another one. There's not a lot of focus in his world on saving on taxes, other than he hey, put money in your retirement account. That's the extent of it. And obviously we focus a lot on what can I do to optimize taxes in my world, and that's going to help me in building wealth. Right.
Amen.
Okay. So we hit on retirement accounts here really quick. He's saying ideally every dollar that you set aside is going to go into a retirement account. If you hit your limits, then spill over and do stuff in non-retirement accounts,
like brokerage accounts.
But man,
it's all based on 401ks, IRAs, and brokerage accounts. And it's all, of course, focused on the market.
Yep.
Same thing.
And in our world, we're not saying that is like off limits. If you're getting a match, if there are reasons to put money in a retirement account, let those reasons dictate it, but don't let that just be the default. Oh, all my money has to go into retirement accounts as much as I can. Let's actually take a step back. Think about the wisdom in why you might or might not choose to do that, and choose accordingly.
Yep. 100%. 100%. And then as
Okay.
we get into the investing side, it's like, it's kind of the same stuff, right? We already talked about the investment philosophy. It's mutual funds, 401ks. And of course, we're in a more broad, real estate, obviously is a big one, but alternatives in general, in conjunction with the valuable things that the traditional assets provide for us, right?
Yep.
So we're not saying one or the other. Again, like we end up being evangelists more for the alternative side, because so many people's baseline is traditional. But at the core, we're saying we take the best of both of those things and come out with the best the result possible, whatever makes sense.
Yep, exactly. Okay. Liquidity. Most of Dave's suggestions aren't giving you liquidity. Now, again, he is saying have an emergency fund. So
yes,
that's probably going to be the extent of it, because everything, if I'm putting everything else in my 401k, well, that's illiquid, right?
Right.
So
yep. Yeah. And that makes a huge difference when you compare, because basically the philosophy there is, hey, we're going to keep a very simplistic way of doing this, and we're going to have these few steps. And what we're suggesting is that we actually value liquidity and opportunity cost, right? Like those are the elements that we need to have control.
yeah.
Those are the things that create our ability to build wealth. And if we lock all of our money up in mutual funds, right? Or again, there's a place for it, but if we're locking it all up there, then we remove a lot of the opportunity that we would be able to provide ourselves by just like mindlessly being like, okay, I get money in, I put it here, I put it here, I put it here. We're saying more, we bring money into our world, we analyze and determine where it's going to create the most optimistic, or it's going to optimize our financial world to help us continue to grow and progress.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. The next one we had is wealth acceleration. Again, part of this goes back to the leverage, right? And the liquidity and the opportunity and the alternative investing part of it. Those and tax savings, all kind of some of these different things we've talked about, allows you to accelerate your growth, the growth of your wealth in ways that you can't if all you're ever doing is focusing on staying out of debt. So again, we talked a minute ago about the home buying, and I know people who are waiting. I was going to say are waiting to buy a home until they have all the money saved up, and it's just getting like it's not happening.
Yeah,
right?
for a lot of people, it never will happen, right?
Yep. So they're chasing this vision, not getting there. Whereas when you choose to use leverage, when you choose to focus on liquidity and these other types of investment opportunities, you can actually accelerate the growth of your wealth rather than kind of chasing it,
and
staying behind in a safe place.
Yeah. And it gets back to one of the core differences that we talk about consistently, and that is having an accumulation mindset versus a cash flow mindset.
Yeah.
Right. And that is ultimately what's happening here when we're talking about the way that we accelerate wealth. It all stems from just the underlying belief about how money can be used and how much more powerful it can be if we're moving away from that very simplistic accumulation wealth mindset.
Yeah. Asset protection. Dave doesn't talk about it. And maybe the reason he doesn't have to is because if all your money's in your 401k, then you naturally kind of
you've already got some. But now, yeah, that is interesting. I just think that what happens is so I was asking Jarvis, I was just genuinely went into a deep dive on demographics around the people that listen to and kind of follow the Dave Ramsey philosophy. And from an economic standpoint, Jarvis tells me it's people typically between $50,000 and $150,000 a year. And then more frequently, as people grow beyond that, they then graduate into a more like, I don't know what the right word is, sophisticated way of thinking and planning around wealth. Yeah. And so when I think about asset protection specifically, I think a lot of it is just that his audience isn't that focused on it, right?
Yeah.
For that demographic, most often they're never going to run into a significant issue around asset protection. But to the extent that you're able to continue to build wealth, then your exposure becomes bigger too. Now, that said, I think everybody should be thinking about asset protection, even regardless of what level of wealth you're on, just because whatever you do have is going to be that valuable to you. And so the idea is you've got to make sure that it's protected no matter what. But I haven't read anything or heard much about Dave around about what Dave's saying around asset protection. I don't think I've heard anything. Now, to be fair, I don't listen to Dave actively. I don't like read his books actively. I just study him when I'm like getting ready for podcasts and stuff like that. You know?
Yep, so, makes sense. Okay, so now we're getting to like the core mindset, and on the Dave side, it's more about scarcity and avoiding risk, right? Being in a safe place. And our approach is more from the abundance side. Again, it's not that we're not telling people to be careful about this or that, or again, even when we use leverage, we say, let's be smart about the way we do it. But let's not be afraid of those things that can help us really grow our wealth. Let's have an abundant mentality and approach it from the standpoint of, well, what can I actually do to build things rather than just being so scared about losing it.
Yep. I love it. And I'm going to save much of my commentary to get into this here in just a minute. So we'll talk mindset more in just a sec.
Okay. So then the end goal, debt free and safe on kind of the Ramsey side. On our side, it's more about wealth creation, legacy, generational wealth, those kinds of things.
Perfect. Okay. So now anybody who's listening kind of at least knows that there's the stark difference in the way that we believe about building wealth, the way that we believe in building wealth versus what we're seeing from a lot of those talking heads who have, as one of the things that you commonly mention is that they're talking to massive people, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you're talking to the masses, the messaging could become a little bit different. Okay. The question is, how were they so unbelievably effective then at getting otherwise smart people to follow consistent, and I'm calling it bad financial advice? Okay, let's jump into it. So the first one that Jarvis and I identified was the power of certainty. Mm-hmm. This one, I think we all like certainty, right? So this just plays to the, baseline that humans have of fear. When we're not safe, we have fear. So we have a natural tendency to work toward getting to a place where we kind of know what is happening, right? As much as we don't like to admit it, a lot of us like to offload our thinking to somebody else, allow them to do the thinking and tell us what to do, and then we just follow the advice, right? And you can see this in many, many walks of life. I have to say, I just can't figure out how people jump on the Trump as a person bandwagon if you're not that person. The two just are so incongruent that it just kind of blows my mind. So I think people really, really crave certainty and safety. Quick story. So I come from both a religious background and a conservative background from a money standpoint. To a degree, my grandpa was actually an entrepreneur. He built a grocery chain, and then he built an incredibly thriving real estate business and portfolio. So he was in there, but then the next generation, so my dad and his brothers and sisters, they kind of, I don't know if in my mind it was kind of a step back in terms of financial growth. They went the more conservative, traditional route. They finished college, got jobs, and they basically worked in the corporate world throughout their lives. Now, my dad, however, would have absolutely loved to build his business outside of it. My mom, that was too much for her. So we had two people. So it's just kind of one of those things where I was seeing it in my own life. My mom really felt like she needed that certainty. She didn't want to be on that financial roller coaster. And, I think that in some ways that probably held my dad back from being able to grow. And yet they both got a lot of what they wanted. So anyway, my point there is really just to say, I think people crave certainty. And that is one of the biggest, most prominent reasons that people end up following bad financial advice. They don't think for themselves and they want it to be certain. Those two things are just brutal, Rod. Do you have any thoughts on it?
That brings up to mind a quote from Dwight D. Eisenhower. And he said, if you want total security, go to prison, because there you're fed, clothed, given medical care and everything else. The only thing you're lacking is freedom, right? So I think, it's obviously a little bit of a different context here, but I think it fits. If all you're looking for is that security, then maybe all of Dave's answers are right for you, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
if you really want to go out and do cool things with your life, if you only focus on the security, you're not going to get there. Again, we talked a little bit ago about the difference between the scarcity versus the abundance mentality. Bring an abundance mentality to it, and there's a lot that you can do if you're not only focused on those most kind of safe, secure types of things.
Yeah, you're certainly, well, I was going to say, you're not going to live life on your terms. I guess if your terms are that you want it to be very rigid and like, then that you can get that. But as far as like being able to design your life the way you want it, you just have to be willing to push past that power of certainty to create a certainty that's so much better. By the way, like I view this isn't like supposed to be a brag session here, but just really quick, like I view my life today and I cringe when I think about like the idea of having to go down a more traditional route and not have my life designed in the way that works for me. I just would feel like this huge ton on my shoulders, and being able to get out of that, being able to push early on in my life, being able to say like, okay, I'm going to work hard to create the kind of certainty that I want, made a big difference. So anyway, point is certainty is really powerful. And to your point, if you want certainty, then just go to prison. That's the moral of Rod's story.
That's the end of the day. Yeah, that's what it
okay. Rod number 2, we're calling the seduction of simplicity, which is really like a brother of certainty, right? Or sister of certainty. And that is just the idea that we, as humans, we like to know what the outcomes are going to be, and we like there to be a really simple path to get there. Yeah. So if we just say, okay, you obey these 3, 4, 5 rules, that's it, then your outcome will be that you're debt-free at some future point in time. And people can just like grab onto that. And to be fair, like, it's not that people don't think for themselves in every part of it, but sometimes we offload components of our thinking, right? So I might be like really locked in. I might be an engineer and be like thinking at an extremely high level. But then when I'm like out of that, I'm like, I don't have the capacity and mind power at this moment to focus on. Engineers might be a bad example, but maybe not. Anyway, the point is it's not all or nothing. We're not suggesting that even people who follow bad financial advice are not thinking in all areas of their lives. We're suggesting that there's a potential they could be offloading some of their thinking specifically around money, and maybe even for good reasons.
Yeah. And I'll run into, from time to time, I'll be meeting with somebody, talking to them about the investment optimizer and whole life, highly overfunded, et cetera. And they'll say something like, man, this is just really complex. And I don't always say it. Sometimes I do, but my thought is always, it's not that this is more complex than a 401k, IRA, mutual fund, these other things. It's just that you're hearing it for the first time.
Yeah.
Right. And again, getting back to your point, our desire is to, or our maybe tendency is to oversimplify things, or want them to be more simple than they really are. But there's danger in that. If you really think that a 401k is simple, you're probably not going to make the best decisions as it relates to that. Right.
Yeah.
It just becomes gambling kind of, right? Like, I'll just to do whatever they tell me to do, and I don't have to think about it, and I'm good. Right. Yep. So if that's what you're wanting when you get into all these different things, is a really simple answer, a really simple path, I don't think that exists. And if you want that to exist, to your point, that's when you follow stuff like this, where it's just like, hey, just tell me what to do.
Just tell me what to
do. He'll tell you what to do, right?
He will. Absolutely will. Absolutely will. So a couple of thoughts, Rod. One, simplicity is absolutely seductive, right? Because it saves us like the time and energy of having to think for ourselves. However, thinkers are the ones who build wealth.
Yeah.
At least if you are around money. Like I was asking Jarvis in my earlier conversation, like what's typically the education level around like people that maybe jump into the Dave Ramsey bandwagon. And it's not that people who follow Ramsey are necessarily less educated, although maybe as a whole in the country that might be somewhat true, but that's not necessarily it. It's specifically focused around financial education. So people who follow Dave Ramsey are often the people who aren't educated as well around financial stuff. So when you get into like the coasts and things like that, you're not going to find a ton of New Yorkers who are on the Ramsey wagon, right? You're just not. That's not the way that they typically think. Okay. So, and then the other quick quote that I have for you, Rod, and I don't know where it came from, but I like it. The real danger of easy answers is that they keep you from asking better questions. Yeah. Right? And that's kind of the overall idea. So to be clear, we are not trying to call people we're not trying to suggest people aren't smart or even that they're not thinkers, but we're suggesting that there are people who are offloading their thinking around financial stuff. And the reason I know that is because you could not, I'm absolutely convinced of this, you could not study both of these methodologies and walk away feeling the same way you do about it. It's just it's not possible because the numbers actually back up the stuff that we're talking about. It's not just about feelings and emotion, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay. Yeah. The next one, Rod, I want to talk about is the tribe effect. And this might be as much of a polling force as anything. Mm-hmm. This, you see it everywhere. And I think about it when I got into my short stint in conservative talk radio, 15 years ago, and you call into Hannity and say, what's his name? Hey, Sean, you're a great American or whatever. Right. And everybody's doing these mantra, the whole idea there is that they are doing a really great job of building a tribe of people who all think very similarly. And let's face it, that happens in politics. It happens in religion. It happens in a lot of ways. And by the way, I'm not even suggesting it's always bad. In teams, it happens in it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? We're working to build a community around people who believe in the invest with benefits philosophy as the best path forward, or the path that works best for them. So it's not necessarily that this is all bad, but I guess the focus or the energy that I have around it is just making sure people remind themselves that it exists, right? There is a methodology inside of this groupthink, inside of this tribe effect that we can get caught into, and it does the same thing that certainty and simplicity does. It makes it so we don't have to do the thinking. We can offload the thinking. In fact, how many times have you thought this in your own life or even said it out loud? Well, so-and-so is really smart. And they believe this, therefore I do. Or how about this? Dave Ramsey's really rich. He's richer than you, Rod. Therefore, his way is the right way. I can't tell you how many times I've had people be I mean, I shouldn't say a ton, but I've had people comment on a YouTube video and be like, well, Dave's XYZ rich. Do you have that kind of money? And I was like, well, I don't have that kind of money, but I can tell you that Dave didn't build it by doing what he's teaching you. And it's very obvious for you to see it. The irony of Dave's wealth is that he built it inside the invest with benefits framework, not inside of the framework that he teaches everybody else. Yeah. So anyway, we have to be careful of these. Okay. So,
or at the very least, maybe you could say he started within that framework and then he outgrew it, like what you described earlier. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it gets to that point of really building wealth, if you're at such a starting level and so pointing out, hey, build an emergency fund, be setting money aside, do these things, then we're not saying that nothing that he has to share is of any value, right?
Right.
It's just what we're saying is don't let that be all you do, right?
Okay, I want to have a little bit of fun here, so we're going to do this lighthearted, Rod, but I want to talk really quick about the rituals of financial religion. Okay, and I'm going to just do a quick comparison, but again, this is meant to be out of fun, just so we think about these things. And the way that I framed, and I shouldn't take credit for this. This was all Jarvis. This was just like Jarvis gave it to me, and I was like, "You're right." Okay, so let's just go through this. Let's talk about the sin. The sin is debt, right? So we're talking Dave Ramsey. So number one, we get into debt. That is our sin, right? So the next step is then the confession. We call into Dave. We admit the mistakes publicly, right? The next step, we cut up our cards as a symbolic break from any more debt spent. Like we are leaving our bad moral habits in the past, and we're going, by the way, cutting up credit cards is a really stupid idea, but that's neither here nor there. And then we go into the next step. We become debt free. And of course, when we do that, we have to call in and declare it to the community. And finally, and by the way, this is what makes Ramsey and such people so powerful, is that once you graduate that cycle, you're like, become the biggest evangelical or evangelist, that's the word, evangelist for that way of thinking. And what we see is it happens over and over. Man, Rod, it makes me think. I've brought up the I'm trying to remember American Greed. Okay, American Greed.
Yeah.
I see the exact same thing in American Greed. I'm like, how do people follow this? Well, it just happens so easily. Their friend does it, and then their friend, and all of a sudden you've got a group of people who are all like, we can't all be stupid, right? We have to, as a group, we're pretty smart. So therefore, this must be right and good. Okay, that's going to be the end of my comparison between religion. But I see, again, the reason I wanted to bring it out is because I do just feel like of the powerful like attractions to bad financial advice, tribe might be number one. Because what it does is it keeps us, again, from thinking. And now we move into just the emotional. We're not even going into logic anymore. And once that happens, things can get a little bit messy. Okay, Rod, what's your take?
Okay, so this is interesting. As I was thinking about, so what are the two primary topics they tell you not to bring up in a family dinner or Thanksgiving, whatever, right?
Politics,
religion,
money, those three?
Well, now we're going to add finances to it. If the tribal thing, like, and then this is kind of what you're representing with this person close to you, that kind of you guys were butting heads about it. And it's like, okay, well, so then, and then I'll go back to the whole, like, maybe sports thing too, right? Maybe those are the forbidden topics at Thanksgiving.
Sports probably is too. And yet the reality is you should have those conversations, but just be aware.
Yeah,
like that's really
it.
To.
Yeah.
We should have those conversations. We should just be aware of like this groupthink element that exists. And even if we can identify that that's out there, we're taking a massive step to being able to like make better financial decisions. Because again, it's really easy to challenge a lot of these things that get put out there just by doing a little bit of simple due diligence. Okay. Rod, while we're talking about Jarvis has become like a third host to this episode. But I was talking to Jarvis like I do, and I was like, Jarvis, okay, I want no fan of Christian Jarvis. I want like this isn't Christian's Jarvis. Let's call this Dave Ramsey's Jarvis even, but somebody who's not validating my points. Because anybody that knows how ChatGPT works, they know that ChatGPT is like the biggest cheerleader that you could possibly have. On your side. Everything's like earth-shatteringly brilliant that you come up with, right? Okay, so I'm talking to Jarvis then, and I said, Jarvis, without any bias, if you were a person and you were gonna follow financial advice, you wanted to grow wealth, how would you do it? And I was like, you know my philosophy, you know Dave's, you know all the philosophies out there. How would you do it? And according to Jarvis, and again, I pushed Jarvis on this multiple times, his emphasis was like, okay, I could get starting out with some of the Dave stuff, but if I really wanted to build wealth, like real wealth, there's just no way that Jarvis is going to do it that way. So like, again, if you're questioning it, go ask ChatGPT, be like, what's the best way to build significant wealth, and see if leverage is part of that. Right? Let's get like an outside third party into the equation. Now, the funny thing here, Rod, is that most of the people that we're talking to, like 97% of the people hearing this, probably are already on the invest with benefits train over the Ramsey train. So maybe this is irrelevant, but hopefully it's at least fun as a kind of a recap. Okay, let's move on. Oh, sorry.
I just want to bring back just again this idea of the simplicity part of it versus a nuanced kind of world, because we live in a nuanced world. So to say, again, use debt, to say debt is always bad in all forms, I think we can all look at that and say, okay, that's probably not right. But saying I'm going to use debt isn't the same as saying everything I ever buy in my world is going to be done using debt.
Yes.
There's somewhere in between that can be a place where it can be strategically used to build in a safe way, right? I'm being smart about the way I use it. Anyway,
Yep.
I know I've probably said that 3 times already. Smart
Probably,
use of debt
maybe,
kind of thing, but
no, it's absolutely relevant. And one of the rants that I always go on when we talk to Dave is this idea that we're just offloading our thinking to somebody else. We've just got to stop offloading our thinking to somebody else. Regardless of all of these other things, right? I get that I can create more certainty. I get that it's simple. I get that I'm part of a group and it feels good to be part of a group, but I have to be willing to challenge those thoughts.
And as people, like you said earlier, who are trying to build a community, we're careful to tell you, don't just come here because you want us to tell you what to do. And I think sometimes I drive people nuts because they'll ask me, they're like, hey, what should I do here? And I'll be like, hey, let's look at the options. And then you can make a decision. And well, what do you think I should do? Oh, well, if you want this outcome, then you should do this. If you want that outcome, you should do that. And again, sometimes I think I drive people nuts because I'm not going to make your decision for you.
I don't think
what I'm going to do is help you understand what your options are and let you make a decision.
And really that's at the core of our philosophy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Rod, we can't forget number 4 here, and that is the emotional hook. So fear and shame are the motivators, right? Oftentimes we get like tough love, like, hey, I'm just going to give it to you straight. Like if you're in debt, you've been stupid type of thing, right? Yeah. And I think, again, the moral of the overall story is that all of these things avoid thinking and logic. And the cure for Ramsey-itis is just thinking for ourselves. Like that's all it is, right? Like once we do that, suddenly things become a little bit more clear. And at least at that point, you could come back and say, like, I would have no problem with somebody coming and saying, you know what, when I started my financial journey, I started with these rules and it really helped me get kind of a baseline, helped me build some discipline and some of those other things. And then over time, I started to like understand the nuance and build, like that would be a perfect trajectory for it, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be, or at least it could be a perfect trajectory. The problem is when we focus so much on the emotion, the tribe, the simplicity, the certainty that we just avoid thinking about it altogether. And that's kind of, so we have to be willing, and I keep saying it, man, we just have to be willing to think for ourselves. Okay. And really, like, this is, again, we see it in politics and religion, in sports and everything. Emotion sells, right? In fact, even in our business, Rod, I think back on my trainings over the years, and people always say, it's like logic gets you in the door, emotion sells, or something like that. I might be missing it a little bit,
something like that.
But the idea is basically that, you know what, you're not actually going to get a sale based on emotion. And I would be the first one to say, I totally disagree, because I do not believe that our system, our track record is based on selling through emotion. It's really based on selling through education, right? So anyway, that philosophy that people have been using, I get the mindset, right? It's easy to sell a car that, you know, you can't actually afford because you get so excited about it, right? Same thing here. I get excited about the community. I get excited about the idea of, calling in and saying I paid off my house or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things feel like big wins, and they can be, but again, they're focused on the emotion, which is taking you off the other side of it, which is really, when you're talking about money, more critical. Like, okay, I talked about the commonality between like money and religion and how that works, but there is a big difference between those two things that I want to point out. The big difference is that money deals with numbers, right? I can actually play out numbers and show how things will work out over a long period of time. So when we're talking about like in the religious world, what I believe is usually not based completely on logic. It's based on something that's otherworldly, that's faith oriented, right? Well, in this world, you don't want to base money on things that are otherworldly and faith oriented. You want to build it on the actual dollars and cents that you can see, that you can create an actual, line from point A to point B and know how to get there. So anyway, that's kind of my rant on that I forgot to hit on when we talked about religion, Rob.
Sweet.
Okay, number 5. We're coming down the home stretch. Number 5, and I actually, played into this just a second ago, and that is the beginner trap.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the beginner trap, Rod.
Well, I'm in an interesting place because my kids are at the point where they're here, right? So I'll get a text or phone call from one of my kids and they'll say, "Hey, what do you suggest?" Like I just graduated college. I'm in my first job. I'm married. I'm, figuring this out.
Yep.
And so where can I kind of get started? And that's always a tough one. So I tell them, well, Rich Dad Poor Dad, read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I really, the principle behind it, again, is not that I'm saying, hey, you should follow exactly what Robert Kiyosaki says. Again, you should take the easy road and get into a system. No, what I'm doing is leading them to a place where there are principles taught. And one of those principles is that there's a lot more out there than just the 401k, the stock market, etc. And if my kids don't want to be entrepreneurial, I'm okay with that. If they don't want to get into real estate investing, no big deal, right? Again, I'm not telling them what they should or shouldn't do. But my point is that the beginner trap in this case is you don't want to get into a system. So let's say it was Dave Ramsey, right? You pick up one of his books or you attend the whatever financial university, is that what they call it? Mm-hmm. And just start taking the steps mindlessly, thinking you're going to get to this destination that you ultimately is probably different than what you have in mind. But be thinking, right? So again, could those principles, those steps be valuable for you? Yes, but think it through and be looking at a whole bunch of things rather than just the one thing.
So here's the thought, Rod. Dave Ramsey, as an example of our other financial gurus too, but all of the above, right? They are kind of like a financial elementary school, maybe a financial kindergarten. And once you have the very core concepts that those are real. Saving is real. Mm-hmm. You have to save. You have to invest, right? You have to those are some of the we don't want to fall into too much debt. All of those things are real. But I think the important thing is that people need to realize that hits a ceiling, right? Mm-hmm. And once you hit that ceiling, you're just going to be stuck in a place that, doesn't get you to that next level. So you can get to a place where you're out of debt and have some financial freedom, but you're not going to grow generational wealth inside of the Dave Ramsey plan unless you're, of course, making millions and millions of dollars each year. So I think that's kind of a key thing, making sure we just understand that ceiling exists. Mm-hmm. So real wealth is going to come from the people who are kind of drawing outside the lines. If Dave Ramsey is teaching us to color inside it, we're going to have to learn as wealth builders to go outside of it if we want to build something more expansive. Now, I'll say it, if you're totally content inside that box, then there could be a place for that, right? Luckily for there's not a lot of those people in our world. But I think that's an important one. So I will say this though, Rod. while I think there's a place for that kind of methodology and like early on, I think what you're talking about is just way more powerful, because what that does is, let's just say theoretically, instead of teaching our concepts right from the front, we decided we're going to start with Dave Ramsey concepts. Well, the challenge is that you're building a philosophy or a way of thinking that's built around those things. And now it becomes even more difficult to pierce that, get out of that mindset and come up with something new. So my philosophy would absolutely be to teach the way you're talking about, the way you dealt with your kids, have them read Rich Dad Poor Dad or the Cash Flow Quadrant or many other books that fit in, have them listen to some podcasts from people like us or people that believe in that kind of more open philosophy, and not just more open, but it's like a more expansive, it's like a more possibility. And I think that's what it is, right? Like helping people understand that wealth doesn't have to be, okay, I struggle for 35 years and finally get to a place where I'm 67 years old and now I can retire and hopefully travel for 5 or 6 years before my health declines and I'm home, right? Like I shouldn't even say it better. There's alternative ways that for some people will fit much better within their life. So for me, that is just like that mindset doesn't work. And for those people, great. But for most people, they just don't want that. They want something more and something different. And I think we've seen that this massive transition. That's where like the FIRE movement comes in. By the way, the FIRE movement fits right into this. I should have thrown it in a long time ago. I 100% feel like the FIRE movement is not totally dissimilar from the Ramsey style in the sense that it's simplicity, it's scarcity, it's really focused on, rigidity. Those are the elements that make it. And of course, the outcome is for most people living I don't know if scarcity is the right word, but a lot of times it's like live as low as you possibly can. So then you don't have to work. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I would rather be able to both live the lifestyle I want and not have to work. And there's a way to do both of those things simultaneously.
Yep. I like it.
Finally, how do we break free? How do we break free of bad financial advice? What's your advice to our audience?
I mean, I think at the risk of oversimplifying, think for yourself, right? And just be committed to that, because it's so alluring to rely on other people's judgment, education, knowledge, the decisions they're making in their world. And so, I trust them, so I'll just do whatever they do. There may be some room for that as you're learning and as you're like building a community around you, but never stop thinking. So if you're going to learn about a system, great, learn about the system, pull the principles from it that you like and feel like fit in your world and apply those. Just don't succumb to this tendency to oversimplify, let someone else think for you, let the tribe make decisions, so you don't have to think about it, etc.
Okay, Rod, I think you summed it up nicely. This has been fun. I was excited about this episode because it's one of those where we're like, we're obviously hitting on the financial things that we believe, like the financial principles we believe in. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was really fun to kind of dig into some of the why behind people are doing what they do. And I feel like there are things that we've talked about quite a bit at different points, but this gave us a chance to like really bring it all into one. So I had a lot of fun with it. Rod, thank you as always. And thanks to our audience. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Money Insights podcast. To learn more about the financial and business strategies discussed in this show, please visit moneyinsights.net. The views and opinions expressed on the Money Insights podcast are not intended to be individual financial, tax, or legal advice. Always consult with the appropriate advisor before making financial decisions. And if you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This will help others find the show and learn wealth-building strategies for themselves. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.